We translate global chaos into instructions for capital.
Hello, dear clients of the company. Hello, dear viewers of our social networks. Today, here at the Era of Change Analytical Agency, we will be examining one of the most important issues. First, we'll go through the markets, what's going where, when to buy dollars, when to sell currency, when to buy gold, and all that. But that's not what's important. I'll explain to you why.
Our weekly trading results.
As for the American market, the situation here is basically the same. Trump has squandered his stability, pumped money in, and is now trying, through foreign policy shocks, to somehow smooth it over. That simply is not going to work out, my dear and highly respected Donald Fredovich, or whatever your full name is actually supposed to be. In my own personal and considered opinion, you will eventually get a Trump Strait, but certainly not the one you wanted through your various efforts at renaming the region. The Strait of Hormuz. Disruptions in this strait will be a drop of about 50 to 60% in the capitalization of the American stock market, and it will happen in the very near future. I have now officially staked my claim, and I ask you to please record it for the history books, as they often say, the exclusive copyright to call the coming market drop the Trump Strait. We are looking at 12 to 13 consecutive and devastating red weekly candles that will surely bury any remaining loyalty of the American electorate to your administration and to you personally, Mr. President, within the next 3 quarters or so. Now, with that established, let us shift our focus and have a very serious conversation about the current state of gold. Have we hit rock bottom? Oh no. We haven't hit bottom yet. And our forecast for the DXY index is 120. It's a very long way from its ultimate conclusion or even its beginning. Several, probably quarters ago already. Yes, it was probably about 4 or 5 fiscal quarters ago. I measure time in quarters, you see, as someone who deals with statistical data much like any other analyst would. So I issued a warning back then that you would get a rather prolonged recession that won't be obvious, which they will try to mask in every way, by manipulating and falsifying the data and so on. And now we're approaching the point where, at the moment when the DXY dollar index turns around, it's currently, I'll remind you, 101. I'm recording this on Wednesday, 101 on the DXY index and change. That's not panic yet. It will start after 105, mark my words, on the DXY index. There will be a brief reversal, but then up to 120. We could get there in just a couple of very fat monthly candles. I would like to remind you that back in 2020, the DXY index fluctuation was only about 5 points, I think. On that alone, the drop was half the market. So thinking there's not enough room to fall, there's plenty, with a huge margin. Look at the VIX index, the volatility index. A slight panic has already started there. They've already started to realize, and the big players are dumping stocks, continuing to dump stocks heavily on the crowd. It is clearly visible in the volumes of data. It is also evident in, well, let's say, the detailed working charts, the diagrams, and the comprehensive working statistical data, right? So the big players unloading are getting out and securing themselves. Next, accordingly for gold, this is what I was leading to it's gonna have a pretty significant drop down there. Yeah, that is a great question. Will I sell my gold now knowing this price drop is coming? No. I'll explain why in just a moment. That is correct. But that it is coming is for sure. I expect a move down. And when the dollar rises, gold always falls. That's an absolute and inevitable fact.
Visit the Era of Change website or app to subscribe using credit cards or cryptocurrency.
Moving on. Now, why don't I sell gold then if I know it will be cheaper? Let me explain this further. Because as I've mentioned to you before, this is the last rise of the dollar, the DXY index, not the dollar-ruble rate. This is especially for those watching us in various countries like Russia, the former Soviet Union, or even parts of Eastern Europe. Not your internal rate, but specifically the DXY. We measure the dollar's value only by it. Consequently, this sudden spike or significant jump upward will be entirely caused by this massive deflationary shock. This is certainly and truly going to be the very last one in this sequence, right? And this final, intense and unexpected shock, we are actually going to witness firsthand, as they often say, quite remarkably and rapidly, right? And then The value of the American dollar will be depreciating for a very, very long time to come. It is expected to continue to depreciate for a very long time against a wide variety of major global currencies. Why? Because, as I've said, the hegemony of the United States is finally ending. I warned about this development several years ago. I said we've been planning this process for a long time. We know it will happen, and it will. So, to avoid being in a situation, attention, the answer to why I don't sell gold. The US dollar reversing sharply and suddenly stopped circulating in a number of countries. I'm not just talking about Russia now. I'm talking about many different nations around the world. It will start losing its positions quite sharply, and there is a possibility it might even be frozen. I have no intention of selling my gold. This is because I know that after this, let's say, global Bretton Woods or the Jamaica system, the entire landscape will be different. As for this entire global one, it will collapse and everything will fall very sharply, and value will be measured in physical objects of the material world. That's why I'm not selling gold, and moreover, I'm preparing to buy silver. As I said, I'll do it right at the bottom of this crisis. I believe I've explained the market clearly. Regarding Bitcoin, I spoke in the last program. If anyone's interested, it still has a long way to fall. You can't envy the likes of MicroStrategy and others who invested in it. I think defaults are not far off there. These guys will soon earn, let's say, their big capitalization by buying this junk. By the way, I was asked why Bitcoin is nonsense. I explained, it's all very simple. Look at, not just at the volatility, right? Look at who needs it and who benefits from it. And regardless of how much it will cost, its price is completely irrelevant. Its nature is a worthless wrapper, meaning nothing. So those who speculate, go right ahead. You can even speculate on manure. Bought it cheaper there, sold it dearer. Basically, there's no difference. But as a way of saving and preserving, it will be relevant only at the moment when the dollar is very strongly falling. That is, people will be entering this Bitcoin, this thing, and the dollar will be losing value. People will go into everything, including buying this resource that nobody needs. The main thing is not to stay there. You'll need to manage to sell it later. So, regarding the markets, I think I've explained myself quite clearly, and that will be enough for you. Now, today, I'm going to provide you with a much deeper understanding of exactly why I think so, right? And most importantly, once again, I warn the faint-hearted, as they say, people with perhaps a particularly sensitive or delicate soul. You can just stop at the market data and quietly step away and find something productive to do in the garden. Or maybe go relax in some local cafe if you are someone who happens to consume narcotic substances in the form of caffeine. Now, for those who chose the red pill, as they say, let's go. I'll start with Russia. I'll start with Russia so as not to keep the viewer waiting. And we'll finish with the global, as they say, global organization. We should begin by acknowledging the fundamental fact that the modern Russian Federation, as a complex way of organizing statehood, is the direct result of a consecutive double collapse of the imperial system. First, the empire that existed at the beginning of the 20th century collapsed. Yes, the Russian one, then collapsed. On its ruins, a second empire arose, the Soviet Union, which also collapsed. These are specific countries or territories, or whatever you might call them, that have absolutely no clear purpose of existence within themselves. When a state lives for the sake of one big idea, it indicates this in every possible way. For example, I'll give an example. Americans live in order to live well. They write and say this everywhere. The American way of life, the American dream. By the way, the American dream it's not a house with a classic little white, picket fence, and like some beautiful Mary giving birth to two little children, and a garage parked right there in that house with a car, some American one. No. The American dream is exactly what was misunderstood in the early 20th century when immigrants were arriving there. The American dream is simply about hard work. Working, for the good of your country and working very hard. Arbeiten, and once again arbeiten. That's what the American dream was. So it turns out that they're the ones who actually have an ideology. That ideology is capitalism. But in Russia, there isn't any except rob your neighbor, which is exactly what those in power have been doing for the last well, probably 50 or 60 years, basically. They're slowly rotting, falling apart, and turning into this mush. Russian society, its so-called mentality, the mentality of this society, it's a cowardly, indecisive people who, on top of that, despite having a large number of higher educations, are also very backward. But look, if we now impartially, I did say this is a red pill, it's bitter and very unpleasant, take this population and compare it with the average level of education and efficiency of the population in Europe or the USA, it might actually come as quite a shock to you, because even if the average IQ is roughly the same, the overall level of social awareness, formal education, and the active involvement of minds in the economy there is just colossally and significantly higher by far. And what does that really say to us, and what does it imply about the situation? About the fact that, by the way, here's a factor, I'll prove it now. Someone gets a degree and doesn't work in their field. Or, for example, they might have earned a full professional medical degree but end up working as a pizza delivery driver to make ends meet, or another similar job. That is simply the reality of it. It's being unneeded, it's a lack of intellectual potential, it's a lack of jobs, it's all this single fate. And why does it live like this? Because it's cowardly, indecisive, and lacking in resolve, because it doesn't fight for its rights anywhere, because it doesn't give a damn about anything. Not my problem. There's no statehood, no idea, and all of this together. This is the fate of the Russian people. So what exactly does this lead to in the end? It inevitably leads to the fact that sooner or later, a figure such as Vladimir Putin comes to power, who gradually consolidates all power around himself, cocoons it, and becomes a long-sitting ruler. I'm not just talking about Putin now. I told you in earlier episodes that the average term of rule there, I think, if you take it from Ivan the Terrible, or even earlier, is 20 years in Russia. The typical ruler stays in power for 20 years. What exactly does that mean? The same Tsar. The same Tsar. And so sitting there for 20 years, this inefficiency, rotting down through the elites, it destroys everything that the population manages to nurture within itself, like some Mikhail Lomonosov, but the system devours him. Now, why was I even talking to you about Putin? Because Putin is the flesh and blood of these people. Just as cowardly and indecisive. Why? Let me explain this to you. Look, every single thing that he does, starting way back from the KGB and ending with the present day, is all done just to hold on to power and the gravy train. And since he has this deep indecisiveness inside him and so on, the ultimate result of all this is actually quite simple. He does not typically opt for escalation, nor does he ever let go of the reins too much. As a result, he follows this middle-of-the-road path. Everything Vladimir Putin, his team, and his entire inner circle do is to maintain power. Why don't we strike Ukraine with nuclear weapons? To hold on to power. Why don't we go to full-scale war? Why don't we declare mobilization, even though all the red lines in Moscow were crossed long ago? Because we're trying to hold on to power until the very end. That's it. No need to invent anything. It's simple. Now, from this point, I'll move smoothly to the global agenda, but remember this point. It's very important. Actually, I'm giving you the second red pill now. As if the first one wasn't enough, I'm going to give you an overdose of these pills now. For those who don't know, it's a reference to The Matrix, where Morpheus gives Neo 2 pills. So take the red one again, since you've stayed until today, or rather, until this moment. So if you look at everything that is currently happening across the globe today, from a strictly political standpoint, you will see that every event is carefully created for one single overarching purpose. It is all designed to provide for those who are already in power, to constantly capture and keep your limited attention. Because in this modern age, your attention is the ultimate form of influence. So all of this is created only so that you must never deviate from this power and faithfully carry out your assigned duties. And your role is that of mere serfs, whether in the United States, in Europe, and indeed across the entire globe. Because in the existing social pyramid, and I'm certainly not revealing any great secrets here, but it seems that most people have forgotten about it. A person's place is determined not only by their intellectual abilities and financial means. This place is secured by the continuity of generations, which, in turn, is ensured by that same power. They took the cozy spots centuries ago and have been sitting there in clans for generations and so on. They create their own clubs among themselves. They arrange profitable marriages, like a king marrying a queen and so on. And as of right now, all of this is still very much present. There are several different societies that are operating right now. Within the American elite, the Russian elite, and so on, they only hobnob with each other, as they say. They only communicate with one another, and they will continue to do so for centuries. This whole news agenda behind the screen isn't meant to distract you so that you don't, God forbid, pick up pitchforks or axes. No. It's meant to ensure that you maintain the position that you currently hold. What position? It represents both a material and a deeply intellectual position. As long as you are trapped within this particular, kaleidoscopic mindset, as long as you perceive the entire world as a series of disconnected fragments, even if the picture seems whole, it is all actually fragmented. That is precisely where your fundamental problem lies. You will never escape this cycle of samsara, which these very authorities have provided for you. It's simple. And why is all of this being done in the world? All these wars, meetings, the signing of treaties, all of that stuff. For one single purpose only. So that you first of all watch it and fail to develop. If you direct all your development inward, you will learn and gain the necessary knowledge, right? Second, you'll dedicate your precious time to yourself, not on them. You will actively work and strive to completely liberate yourself from the master-slave relationship system. I'll give you an example. You can work with someone in a team, even for someone without being a slave. Take our team, for instance, people living in different parts of the world. They are effectively working for themselves. And we share the profits with them. That's normal. But if you find yourself deeply immersed in a system where you are a slave, then your children will be slaves as well. And so, unfortunately, many people, not realizing this or looking inward, today I will show you how to transform this entire cycle. They live for generations in this system, while these self-important and influential figures like the likes of Elon Musk continuously feed off them like mushrooms. If we take a closer look at the internal agenda, there are many political scientists who can explain all the various complexities to you. And we also carefully analyze local news to deliver comprehensive data-driven analytics with various detailed forecasts for the future.
For your convenience, we've introduced Dark Mode, better eye comfort with just one click.
This is all just a consequence. We're simply providing the opportunity to understand what's happening and what will happen as a result of what we're seeing now. If you don't understand the gravity of this situation, then you are completely finished. Because if you honestly think that this internal agenda they broadcast to you at the state level, or even the international level, with all these wars and ongoing conflicts, is anything but a calculated smokescreen. At this very moment, Trump's oil in Cushing has run out. It's reached the lowest recorded levels since 1984. Climate change has truly begun. An unprecedented heat wave is occurring in Siberia. It's just unbearable that people in Europe are dying from the heat. We knew this would happen. There's even a name for it, El Niño. And as a result, we see these rising prices for fertilizers, for water, for everything. Everyone is cutting back on all of this now. And they're like, well, let's slow down the war a bit so oil gets cheaper, because otherwise, the harvest season is coming up this fall, and we'll have absolutely no equipment to gather the crops with. There'll be a widespread famine, and the people will surely have our heads. You see, by understanding things just a bit above the level of the daily news cycle they feed you, you'll immediately be able to not just see, but accurately predict events. That's why we're reaching out to you specifically today. We're giving you the chance to see it all and helping you comprehend exactly what it all means.
Check out our regular reports in the Realized Forecast section on the Era of Change website.
All these elections in the United States and so on, I started talking about Putin here, how everything he does is to stay in power. But what do you think? That in other countries, is it possible that these various, let's call them influential leaders, actually do everything they do for some other hidden reason entirely? For heaven's sake, as they say. That is the only reason any of this is done. For influence, for keeping your attention, for generational succession, for the elite to marry the elite, as they say, and that's it. And you're just left where you are. Now here is the solution. Alain Delon, in what I think was almost his final award acceptance speech, shared some incredibly profound reflections. In the very last speech of his life, as we might call it, he said that this world is fake to the core. He felt it and saw it for what it was. Those are the words of an old man who has gained wisdom, and that he would be leaving this world without any regrets. But I'm telling you today, there is definitely a way that is completely unrelated to what he's saying. This man obviously had absolutely nothing left to lose. He had dedicated his entire existence to this system. But is there a way for us to truly live differently, without having to say goodbye to this world? Yes. It's very simple, it seems, but it's both complex and very simple. To step out not of this world, but of this system. Say goodbye to this system once and for all. But how? Say goodbye to society. Now you might think of becoming a hermit and so on, but that's a radical measure. It's all very simple. Understand that the entire world surrounding you is what you touch, see, and hear. Everything you put in your head, your whole world, it's actually right there inside. You even perceive it differently, you just don't realize it. Take two different people, one colorblind, the other with normal vision. They'll look at the same object and each will see it differently. I could tell a parable about two sages walking along, seeing a flower by the roadside. One says, "How beautiful." The other says, "How ugly it is." But the flower was just a flower. So look, here's the most interesting part. You can leave society even while being in it. Simply everything that happens in this society, or rather in this entire civilization, shouldn't affect you at all. That's it. You see, all these narratives, these things deeply ingrained and hardwired into your psyche since childhood that you were told about history, politics, economics, and so on, they have absolutely no real meaning or significance at all. It's a way to control you. So what does matter? Well, I really like the approach of some Southerners. When they're asked, "What do you do?" He says, "Well, he says, really love skiing." You see? That's his value. He truly enjoys what he's doing, so he's very much into skiing, yachting, or whatever a person's true passion might be. And the value of what is truly precious and super interesting to you is found right here in this, not in all those various events, not in the fluctuating dollar or ruble exchange rates and so on. All of that is really just incidental and distracting external noise. So what do we actually do? We take your money on outsource, perform deep analytics, and tell you exactly what you need to know. That right now you could do this, that, and the other based on such and such data. Choose whether you'll do it or not. But for you, this isn't the foundation of your life, not the goal of your existence, not this money, not anything at all. The goal of your existence is to achieve happiness, and happiness lies in fulfilling yourself as a human being. Here I am, sitting before you now, fulfilling myself as a person. This is important to me, to assist you in fully understanding something, and provide you with a unique opportunity to make the world a significantly better place for everyone. Today, I could discuss in detail the news that surrounds you, like the explosions in Moscow, the widespread power outages occurring everywhere, and the imminent political collapse in the States and Europe. The right-wing shift, by the way, has already taken place. Now immigrants will be kicked out of Europe. A document has been signed about this. In short, there's a lot. Fulfilled predictions, all of that, it's all just noise. There is nothing but you sitting right here. Nothing. Your deepest personal interests and other similar things. Elton John was asked, he was still in school back then, "What do you want to be?" And he says, "I want to be happy." They tell him, "You don't get it." He says, "No, you're the ones who don't get it." That's all you need to know. Truly withdrawing from society is perhaps the only real path to finding deep inner happiness, quiet contemplation, and the only true way to fulfill yourself in this life. It means not chasing after any external examples, millions of dollars, or anything else of that nature. Believe me, I am a man who, by his, say, 39th year, had already earned his first $1 million. But I found that there is absolutely nothing there beyond that line, nothing at all to be found. My life didn't change in any way. Just as I used to work out, I still do. Now I have 3 types of sports instead of the one I was fanatically in love with for 20 years. Just as I ate the same thing, like the same chicken breast daily. Well, I still eat it now. Just as I basically went swimming, used to go to the lake, now I go to the sea, it's the same thing. That's how it is. Just as I drove a middle-class car, or even some simple one, I still do, because there's no point in investing in a piece of metal. Only a person with a very limited level of intellectual development would invest in brands and so on, in some imaginary comfort and so forth. You drive around in it, maybe you spend only 2% of your time doing it, but you're spending all your hard-earned money or a huge part of your personal funds on it just to show some status to someone else. I can easily wear the exact same shirt for 3 whole days, and only when it finally starts to smell a bit do I throw it in the wash. Because I honestly don't give a damn about external attributes. The only thing I dress up for is meetings. I'm meeting with you now, and for a meeting you need to dress decently. Why have I laid all this out? Using my own example just now, friends, I want you to understand. Now something like this will begin, I don't know, a hurricane of world events. The threat of a major war and all the chaos that comes with it. If you get yourself fully immersed in this agenda, I certainly do not envy your position. You will likely perish mentally first and then physically. And on your corpse, mushrooms will grow again, which I wouldn't want. I'll conclude with the words of Yeshua HaNozri, which are my absolute favorite from the novel The Master and Margarita. All power is violence. Humanity as a whole will enter the kingdom of truth, where no earthly power or force will ever be needed. Those who think that everything is fixed and one power will simply follow another are deeply and fundamentally mistaken. The rapid advancement of modern technology and science will inevitably guide humanity toward a critical turning point where the old world order collapses. Please do not bury yourself before that happens. The rest doesn't matter. Until next week, friends.
We're giving away 3 website subscriptions every month. Just 2 simple steps. Subscribe, leave a comment, and you're in.